Recorded live.
Hello and welcome to the Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we wrap up our series of discussions of movies in the fairly recent found footage genre with the 2007 Spanish film Rec. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have. So warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, creator of the Alex Van Helsing novels. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, lead singer of the band Deserts of Mars and co-creator of the comic Psychon from Tokyo Pop and Clockworks from Humanoid. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
And also in Denver, as always, color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman. Say hello.
Hola, ¿qué tal?
Hola. Okay. I'm sure you actually enjoyed this, like seeing it in the original Spanish.
Very much.
Okay. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/horror. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your device. www.audibletrial.com/horror. Okay. According to Wikipedia, Rec is a 2007 Spanish zombie horror film co-written and directed by Jaime Balaguerro and Paco Plaza. The film was shot in Barcelona, Spain, and the title is an abbreviation of the word record as it appears on a video camera. How would you, Julia, if you were a native Spanish speaker and you were going to see the movie Rec, how would you say it?
Rec.
Rec. Okay.
It's the same, just roll the R.
Balaguerro and Plaza previously directed the 2002 documentary O.T. La Película. Rec was filmed as a found footage film and used a shaky cam technique. The film was remade in the U.S. as the 2008 film Quarantine. As the first installment of the Rec series was followed by three sequels, Rec 2 in 2009, Rec 3 Genesis in 2012, and Rec 4 in 2014, which was the final installment, at least so far. Spanish company Filmax is responsible for the Rec franchise. Okay. So let's get our opening thoughts. Tony, you're the one who recommended that we look into Rec, and you were like, oh, why are we going to spend time with that movie? Because we could be watching Rec. So let's get your opening thoughts first, and then Joya, and then I'll say something. So lay it on us, Tony.
Well, it was one of those movies that I'd heard about and was like, well, I've heard it's all right. I'm kind of not. And, as we've been doing this retrospective, people can tell it's not my favorite genre, and there's a lot of crap in this genre. But when I watched this, and Quarantine's not bad, but it doesn't have quite the same flavor. Actually, I was a little surprised at how good Quarantine was because I was expecting it just to be a really, really cheapy remake, and it holds up okay. But, yeah, I actually liked I thought the setup was pretty good. I think there's enough little bits of mystery, and I think the reactions overall, they have some of the same movie tropes of people don't exactly act like, how you might. But I thought it was more genuine than other movies of the sort. And, I thought the conceit of and the setup for recording was pretty good. And for the budget, I thought they did a really good job of balancing, horror and showing you just enough for it to be creepy and scary.
Very cool. Julia, I assume this is your first time seeing the movie, and what are your opening thoughts?
I really got a kick out of this movie. I thought it was really interesting. I was glad to see it. I was really glad we saw it in Spanish because it's mostly available in dubbed in English, which we started watching it that way, and I was like, oh, this is no, we can't.
Yeah, I've heard about that. Like, I got to see it in Spanish, and I've heard the English dub is not really where it's at.
Yeah, just starting to watch it. I mean, I was distracted by the fact that clearly the woman who was dubbing the main character was like probably 20 years older than the main character. I'm thinking, but anyway, so we did watch it in Spanish, and I am a native Spanish speaker, so to me that was a lot of fun. And of course I'm not from Spain, and so I really enjoyed the accent of the Spaniards. It's very cool. But I liked what I think I liked the most was the practical effects. Like, they were just really, I felt like the special effects were really good, and I don't know if they used any computer at all, but if not, then whatever they did for the effect of the Medeiros girl at the end is amazing. She's so skinny. I don't know where they found this person. And then
she might be a CG effect. I don't.
That's what I'm
know.
saying. Like, if it's either CG or they just found some really anorexic skinny person, but it's really, that was creepy, and then the face was really creepy. And the guy, like whenever people got, you know, like the person who, just different gore effects of injuries, they were just really effective. And I was just looking at them going, is this? Because I'd forget for a minute that it wasn't real, and then I'd be like, this is fictional. So how did they do that? Because it felt more authentic than most things that I see. So I enjoyed it.
Well, no, and Tony, if you know, when we get to it, or now, is the skinny zombie at the end? Is she a CG effect or just a skinny actress?
I thought that she was not. I mean, to me, I don't know how much money. If it's CG, it's covered pretty well, because usually for the money, you get pretty dodgy CG for the budget that this looks like it had, unless that's where they spent their money. But I think they got somebody who was pretty, like, they found somebody. I mean, if you look hard enough, there's, you know.
Oh, there's all kinds of models.
People,
I mean, you can always find an actress. If you put out and say, I want a skeletal actress and a fat actress and a 60-year-old actress, I mean, you'll find them, so for sure. I mean, and that whole scene is in night vision, which, of course, further obscures whatever it is that you're looking at, which is brilliant.
And I
thought they were really smart about that.
The trivia says that, like, so much of this movie, the actors don't know what's going on. Like, they would be given the script the same day sometimes, and so they wouldn't even know what their fate was going to be. They didn't know what was going on. It really was completely dark in that scene, so they didn't know what was going on there. They didn't know that the fireman was going to fall from upstairs, so they were all scared, like, for real. And so I think that's really cool. I think that it lends a lot to the authenticity of it.
That's really cool. I think one of the things that's clever about this story is that, and this would be my opening thought, is this movie is a very effective thriller, mainly because it shoves everything into one fairly small contained area, which is to say this one building, and you go to really just 3 or 4 locations inside the one building, and so it's one of those writing challenges. When you think about it, it's kind of tough as a writing challenge to go, all right, come up with enough scenes and enough stuff for your characters to do while they're wandering around, one particular building. But by doing that, you don't have to create much more of an illusion than you already have, because everything, you've accepted the world that you're in as quite real, and you can just pretend that the rest of the world is going on. Even though it does have a whole first act that takes place in a firehouse. So there's the exception of the fire station that they started. So I guess the place that I'd want to start. This movie is Wreck. It came out in 2007. This is the same year that Paranormal Activity came out, and as we noted, that's nearly 10 years after the original Blair Witch came out. But by the time these movies came out, you've got a full-blown, this is a real genre. This came from being a genre that didn't quite exist to 10 years later. It's really real. So, is this as good as it gets, and do you think that this genre has really kind of come to an end, or do you think it's going to keep going strong? Anybody want to take a guess?
I don't know. I mean, if it does keep going more, I mean, you already have stuff where people are using their cell phone instead,
One of to the point about cell phones, I mean, that's one thing they definitely didn't have at the Blair Witch period, right?
Right.
They've got a handy cam, they got a giant ass camera that they've got to carry. Of course, this film has the conceit that it's filmed on, entirely on a TV camera. So you have this really nice, that they've come up with the excuse of a journalist. In fact,
she's for real too, by the way. She's actually is a TV. They call her a TV presenter.
Really?
Spain. Yeah.
So the setup is you've got this. You've got the young lady. Actually, what is the name of the main character? The name, it's completely gone out of it because we follow her the whole time. Oh, Angela, of course. So Angela is a reporter, and she works for a sort of a lifestyle show that's on at night called While You're Sleeping, and they are going to do a feature where they follow the firemen of Barcelona around the city on their usual rounds. And, like, what do they eat, what do they sleep, yada, yada. And that's the conceit that takes them on this emergency call to this building. And
None of the firemen guys like.
Yeah.
So if it's called While You're Sleeping, then who's watching it? Yep.
That is good. Like I think that the other thing that kind of set it apart for me is a lot of the interactions felt like all that stuff feels like those shows. You know, the conceit holds up pretty well, as opposed to usually they'll either kind of trump it up or, and considering she is a presenter, like, I think that plays into it as well. Like, it feels fairly authentic overall.
Yeah, because it's so annoying when you see movies and the journalists are being played by non-journalists who have never taken the class of how to talk like a journalist.
Right.
And journalists all talk the same way. They all sound the same on TV. And non-journalists don't sound anything like that in movies. And I'm like, why don't you just watch, like, a news broadcast?
Just one.
Try that.
At least one. Just spend an afternoon watching CNN, and you'll be able to just imitate those guys.
Right.
You know, that's the other frustrating thing about the dubbed version. You know, it's just like, Run Lola Run, right? Which was in German. It's so good. You know, but here in the United States, we got the stupid dubbed version, and you can't, it's almost impossible to copy the kind of excitement and the sort of agitated yelling that people do when they're super excited. That's just like impossible to dub. It always winds up sounding absurd. And I don't even mind that for like a 1960s, a kung fu film or an Italian horror movie that really was never meant to be seen in Italian. But it's really annoying for one of these newer films where realism is supposed to be important. But yeah, she's very realistic, and all the firefighters seem like real firefighters. I mean, this is a good troupe of actors. When they get to basically nothing happens. We just meet firefighter characters, and then they get an alarm that there's some kind of a health emergency at an apartment building. And when they get to the apartment building, then you meet, a passel of actors hanging out in the lobby who are going to be the ones that we spend, the rest of the evening with. And they're just sort of your typical people who would be in a given apartment building.
So the call is to so she spends hours and hours at the firehouse with nothing happening and talking about how, the routine calls that we usually get aren't necessarily fires, but there's like, pet rescues and whatever. And then they get a call, and it's some lady who has been screaming in her apartment, and nobody can get into the apartment. So that's why they go out there.
Yeah. And actually, I think it starts out, once they get there, we still don't know of any sort of major issue. We think that it's maybe an old woman had a stroke, or who knows.
Maybe there's domestic violence, domestic issue. Or
and this is and so at this point you've been lulled, having watched this movie, even though you know damn well that you've gone to see a movie that's a zombie movie. You've been lulled into sort of, I'm watching a fairly boring reality program, and they go up to the apartment, and at the back, it seems to be empty, and at the back of the apartment, eventually they spot this old lady, this sort of, heavy-set old lady in a big sort of dressing gown, I guess you'd call it, or house coat or whatever, and the movie instantly switches into another gear, because this old lady is wandering around confused, and then she attacks the fire chief who's there, and that's the first moment that the movie completely switches from being, a boring reality show to, oh my gosh, this is a zombie movie.
Yeah, and then that's the thing, is because it's so authentic feeling, it took me a lot longer to really understand that it was a zombie, because I didn't know anything about the movie going in. It took me a lot longer to understand that it was a zombie movie than it would have if it was a regular big budget movie, because I was like, wait, what? I was just kind of like, it was more like how I would react if a real zombie situation happened.
Right,
like, why is she biting? Why is she biting him? Like, that's so weird. Like, it's Mike Tyson or something.
Tell the world about you were just telling the story the other day about Tony's observation about what happens if somebody just holds out a knife and stabs somebody else. at a party. Because I think it.
Well, okay.
Yeah,
so,
I still tell people, like, you think that you're fat.
Yeah.
Like, you think,
Yeah, so we
like,
haven't,
I can stop a thing. I could shoot at somebody. I could stop them. I could grab their hand. Like,
right.
until I experienced that at you guys' party,
Yeah.
you quickly, and I have pretty good reflexes.
No, we have not.
Okay. Okay, so Jason and I have done for many years, we haven't done it recently, but we did for many years a party around Halloween time where everyone's invited to present something original to the rest of the group. So it can be a short story that they wrote or a poem or whatever they want. And so we had a couple that was there, that were some friends of ours, who chose to do a story, but they were just telling it verbally, and really she was telling it, and her husband was just there. And so she's telling the story, and her husband just keeps correcting her, and she's just getting more and more angry. She's like, oh, my God, are you going to let me tell the story or what? And he just keeps correcting her. So then all of a sudden she just pulls out a knife and, like, crosses, like, several people and stabs him.
Yeah, no, it was a pin, though. It was a pin.
What?
Like, she had a pin. So it was like a ballpoint, ballpoint pin.
I thought she had like a pocket knife or something. Anyway, the point is she just goes and stabs him, and we're all like, oh my God, is that part of the performance? And it was part of the performance, it turned out. But really, we didn't know that for sure.
Everybody was like, we should do something, and they luckily said, ha ha ha, that was our skit, before we pulled her off of. But it was so quick, and that's what I really learned. Like,
yeah,
if something's going to go down, it goes down quickly. And
yes.
like I said, I've been told I have pretty fast reflexes. Like I've reacted to things and we're like, whoa, So I tend to think that I have okay. I'm not combat trained, of course. Probably somebody who's combat trained in some sort could have done something because you may be looking for that. But in a social setting where things just went south so quickly, like, yeah, I mean, you're totally right. When she attacks, you would be surprised. If anybody thinks, like, if you're just an average Joe with no training at all, and you think, like, oh, I would have grabbed their hand, I would have grabbed the gun, I would have done X, Y, and Z, let me tell you,
right.
If you're not expecting that, BS. Like, that's what I learned that night.
Those guys in France on the train, the heroes, they are actually, the two of them were like actually had military training, and they're the ones who were like, let's get him. Everyone else kind of like, whoa, this guy's walking through with a bunch of guns, and
well, it's so incongruous. Like for most of it, it's also so incongruous. Like I remember I would be in Italy, and I turn a corner, and the cops have Uzis, and I think my heart probably skipped a beat. Like I wasn't doing anything. There was no reason for me to be, to react like and be scared. But it was still like, there's a person with an Uzi right. Oh, I just turned a corner. Holy crap! And if they, for some reason shot that Uzi, there's no like, oh, and then I dodged out of the way and ducked because, that's what people are able to do, spies and stuff. Not so much, I believe.
Yeah.
Well, and this is truly what reality movies are supposed to be doing. I mean, found footage movies. It's supposed to be a movie that is just showing life going on in its sort of uneventful way, and then something horrible happens, and it catches you suddenly off guard, and that increases the excitement of it. But there's a fundamental problem, which is that you just paid your ticket at the booth. You know that this is supposed to be a scary movie, so you don't. It's very difficult to kind of have that sort of illusion. It'd be like, because you can't hold both ideas in your head at once. James Bond can be many, many things, but it cannot be surprising because you expect big stunts, and set pieces and all that stuff. The surprise would be if none of that stuff happened and James Bond turned out to be like a drama or a court, or if it spent the whole movie in like a courtroom or something. But other than that, in this case, you expect to be scared. So, but anyway, it still works pretty well because this woman just suddenly tears a giant chunk out of the fire chief's throat with her teeth, and nobody knows what to do. And the way the movie's set up, we're watching it through this TV camera because Angela is leading the cameraman around.
Pablo.
Pablo. And those are those are mainly the main characters. Although I gotta say, with zombie movies, and Tony, you've seen more zombie movies than I do, it's hard to figure out who your final characters are gonna be. Usually in a zombie movie, like who your main characters are gonna be, and it's also really tough to get attached to any of the characters because notoriously zombie movies give you a lot of characters because they're gonna start killing them off, pretty soon. I mean, did you know watching it who you thought was going to make it through the film?
I wasn't positive. I mean, the thing about the found footage is it seems like almost nobody makes it. So.
Right.
That's true. I forgot momentarily that actually spoilers. But I mean, by the end we've even lost our main characters. I was shocked. I really thought that at least somebody was going to make it out, so that. I don't know. I figured the main.
I mean, it's really infuriating how the rest of the community handles. Because what happens is these guys go in, they find the old lady. The old lady attacks one of the cops, fights him, whatever. But pretty much immediately, when they're trying to get the cop back out to get him medical attention, they realize that they are now locked in from the outside by the authorities, quote unquote, whoever that may be. And nobody knows why, and it's so infuriating that nobody ever, well, I guess they do send somebody in eventually to try to diagnose, to assess the situation, but it seemed like there should have been some mechanism for, getting the people out but still keeping them quarantined, but rather they just decided, let's just leave you all in there and let you all die, which I guess
I don't think they necessarily meant that exactly. It's a situation where, if they do that to that building, that means there must be some other stuff going on all throughout the city.
Well, that's what it was. The vet. It was the veterinarian. Yeah. Remember? What happened was that the dog from that building was at the vet, and then that dog died basically, and then came back and went crazy and attacked all the other animals, and then who knows what else happened after that. But that's how they traced the dog back to this building.
And so this is a zombie outbreak that works kind of like very recent zombies we've seen. They're fast-moving zombies. I'm going to call them zombies. They call them infected. It doesn't matter. The dogs are zombies too, so we know this particular kind of zombie outbreak affects pets. And it's ideal for this sort of movie. I mean, really, found footage should have been a lot of zombie movies because it's so ideal because you're always running because these zombies come fast, and so you got to run fast and keep the camera moving. If you can find some stupid excuse to keep the camera going, the excuse here is, hey, we're journalists and we've got to record all of this so that for whatever reason, because they're journalists and that's what they do. That's as good an excuse as I've ever seen. I mean, given that there is no really good excuse. I totally believe that journalists would keep shooting, but we're going to find out, in fact, that these are zombies. But I'm trying to figure out how to describe. I mean, I don't mind skipping around. I want to go to the explanation for why these zombies are here. It turns out that these zombies are created by a virus that has been released by a church researcher who was looking into demon possession. So basically what he managed to do was distill demon possession into a chemical, and it turns out if you do that, whoever has it becomes a rabid, biting, possessed person and then spreads it really quickly.
Yeah, you understood that better than I did. The thing is, he's been studying. Okay, so they say there's this penthouse, quote unquote, which I love that it says penthouse in the English, but it's actually they said attic in the in the Spanish. So I'm like, yeah, I love how we fancified his loft apartment. But anyway, this has been closed off supposedly for years, and nobody's been there. And so they go up there because they're trying to get away from all the zombies and trying to find a key to the sewers, basically. And so they go in there and they find all this stuff about all these newspaper clippings and everything about this possessed girl, and again the lighting is completely from the camera only because at this point the electricity's been like shut off or whatever, and so you know that the possessed, once you start like figuring out that this guy has been like basically keeping this possessed girl prisoner, that she's going to turn up at some point in the next 15 minutes or so.
Yeah.
So anyway, but yeah, like you're saying that that they play this recording from that scientist or whatever he is, and he is talking about that, and I was like, wait, I don't get it. What is he do? What was he doing? But I guess
distilled demon possession creates zombies in this movie.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the idea is that every movie has to have some excuse for there to be, rabid people running around biting people, and in this case, it may as well be magic. I mean, because in movies like 28 Days Later, in that people get bitten, the infection works on you within 90 seconds or so, and you become a zombie. And in that case, I can't remember. I think it was a biological weapon. In this case, they just said, you know what? It's demonism. Great. And by the way, that fits in with European horror very well, anyway. Because wasn't that, Tony? I don't know how well you remember Night of the Demons.
Oh yeah.
That was how it worked in Night of the Demons, wasn't it? I mean, they're like demons, and they bite one another, and they turn into more.
Yeah, something similar to that. Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, that's a killer movie. that's a great movie. And that one, they're stuck inside of a movie theater. Wow, this is very similar to that. It didn't even strike me that.
Yeah.
So some other themes do turn up. You have, for instance, this notion of xenophobia. Like, so you have a Chinese family, and the Spaniards in the building think that maybe, since this appears to be a viral outbreak, they think that maybe the viral outbreak has been caused by the Chinese, because so they don't really know them very well and they don't trust them.
And the father is sick. He's
yes.
bedridden. I love that the writer, what's his name, Paco Plaza.
Yeah.
He incorporated the director. He put that business about the Chinese people having their door open all the time in because he actually knew some neighbors that had their door open all the time.
Interesting.
And he thought that was really strange.
Yeah, I mean, they talk about their culture a lot, and they find that, the Spaniards, they find the Chinese to be strange. They find their language to be impenetrable, so that when the chief when the fire chief goes, what is he? He says something like, "What am I speaking Greek?" At least in the American.
Speaking Chinese, yeah.
Am I speaking Chinese? Meaning,
yeah.
Am I speaking nonsense and craziness?
Right.
Meanwhile, there's one other girl who's sick, which is the little girl who, she's actually infected. We don't know that at first. There's much less sort of suspicion cast her way because it's so much easier to sort of be suspicious of the foreigners. I mean, in a way, this is carrying on riffs of like the monsters are doing Maple Street and stuff like that, which just played with. If you create paranoia, then by just locking people in a situation, they'll start to turn on one another. Although to be honest, very little time is spent with that. This is not that paranoid a movie. It turns out to be more or less just an action movie or a chase movie. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I'm complaining about that. I don't know if it actually would have been better if it had spent more time with them, being afraid of one another, a la The Thing. I mean, it's just not that kind of film. If you did that, the pacing would be totally different.
Yeah, and I think the pacing of how it plays out works pretty well. Closer to the end, I was a little bit like, really, like. Where are the flashlights? I know, there's a conceit of everything, but you're still like, maybe not going there. Like,
yes.
I don't know, it works and it doesn't for me at the same time. Like, I understand. I mean, but it was the most, like, horror movie thing,
What was your favorite jump scare? Well, it's less like a horror movie, more like a haunted house.
Oh, God.
Like, oh,
No, the jump scare, the one you know is coming. You know it's coming.
Yeah.
But you still just jump like 10 feet. I totally dug my nails into poor Jason's arm. Is when the guy's like, the Pablo, the cameraman, is like, I'm gonna check out what's up here in the attic after the attic door just swings down, open. And he's like, I'm gonna check it out with the camera and
exactly.
just kind of film what's going on. And so you're like, well, obviously, we've been learning all about this demon-possessed girl and how the guy kept her. Obviously, she's going to be up there. And it's like, there's no way that I'm going to be scared by this because it's obviously going to be. And there's still, like, the camera swings around full 360 degrees, like basically right where it started. The creature jumps out at the camera, but it's like this night vision. And she's really weird.
No, it's not this is a different zombie up there in the attic.
Oh, that's a zombie? No, that's the girl.
Nope, it's a child. It's a little boy.
You don't think that's the whatever girl?
It's not the Medeiros girl.
Oh.
It doesn't matter.
Where'd she come from?
She's wandering around in the back of the attic apartment.
Oh, I thought she was the same person. Well, anyway, the point is you don't see the person for very long, so you don't actually know. But yeah, I guess you're right. It was a smaller child. But anyways, it jumps out at the camera, and you're just like. Scream! I mean, it just can't not scream, even though you knew it was going to happen. But okay, I didn't understand that it was two different people.
But
okay,
it doesn't matter because it's a big.
Still a really effective jump scare.
Yeah, well, also the gore and the kind of ruined jaw and all of that just works really well.
Yeah.
Like they were really smart about how they filmed that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and it is ridiculous because this camera moves slowly all the way around the attic, and you're like, there's going to be something. And then there is. In other words, the payoff is precisely what you expect it to be, and it
still works.
It's totally effective. It would be funny, actually, if it had turned out to be something different. Like, I don't know. I'm not being sarcastic, but if it had turned out to be like a cat or something like that, that was just like screwing around. That's its own cliche. I mean, back in the early '80s, there was a whole. Tony, you've seen a hell of a lot of slasher movies. Where there's been a whole bunch of action. Now there's not so much action. We're in the kitchen, and the pantry opens up, and it's like, but it's the cat. The cat has gotten in the pantry and now leaps into your arms. And then usually the killer actually then comes in from like a different direction. But
right.
I think they were called cat scares or something. I can't remember. Roger Ebert had a whole nomenclature for the cat fake out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's pretty good, like, where they kind of like, the boy breaks the light and everything. Oh, well, that must have been it. And they turn, and then it's the woman with just ruined. Ugh. I think I thought that the way they portrayed her was super creepy.
Yeah.
It turns out she is, believe it or not, is played by an actor named Javier Botet. He is 38 years old. He lives in Ciudad Real, and he is really skinny. Mm-hmm. And that is just, yes.
Well, they did a good job.
So the breasts are prosthetic then?
Yes, the breasts are yeah. He's just a super skinny dude, and he's doing a lot of work. I mean, he's really because there's a lot of there's a lot that he can do. He's kind of a contortionist, and he's just super duper skinny. So great. I'm glad to see that Spanish acrobats are getting work. That's really awesome. It's a huge I'm amazed at how many people are actually in this building. Basically, they reach a point about halfway to 3/4 through where the script decides, you know what, it's time to just sort of kill everyone. So they the zombies, such as they are, have been locked away in this different part of the building, basically an adjacent business to the building, a little clinic, separated by a garage door. The zombies manage to come through the garage door and essentially eat everyone, leaving, our couple main characters running around upstairs. I got one more really scary thing that I wanted to mention in this film, and that's the little girl zombie.
Oh my God! I couldn't even watch her. I was like,
yeah.
this little 7-year-old girl, and they're like, well, she's sick, and they're all kind of looking at her suspiciously, and the mom keeps saying she has tonsillitis or whatever. I couldn't catch what the word was in Spanish, but anyway, it was translated as tonsillitis in the captions, and so like suddenly she just bites her mom and like takes off, and I'm like, okay, I'm leaving. I can't watch the 7-year-old zombie kid.
I thought it was really cute. This cute little zombie girl. She was awesome because the way little girls run is so hilarious, and so she's just like this little like Eddie Munster sort of creature. And, I mean, it's hard to take.
She's still biting people and like
I mean, look, the zombie girl in Night of the Living Dead, to me, was much scarier than the zombie girl. I mean, unfortunately, the thing is, seeing a little girl run at you with her fingers and little claws I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying it gets a laugh from me. And
but again, like I can think that's what's kind of scary and what makes it like all of your instincts are to go, oh, little girl's running, that's kind of funny, but yet they will bite your face off.
Yeah. Oh yeah, she scared the crap out of me.
And I'm all for, that's the question, Tony, is, you come up with an idea that's both scary and funny, and some people's instinct is, cut that because we're getting mixed emotions from the audience.
No.
Like, screw that.
And also, if you've dealt with any kids of that age, oh yeah, that's funny when they run and stuff, and when they jump, like, oh, I would just do this, like I'm an adult. Try putting a kid in a car seat. Try getting a kid to go somewhere that they don't want to go, and the tantrum that they throw, and all of that, and you will see that if you've had to deal with any wiry little kid just flailing and acting like a tiny jerk, like and because they haven't had a nap or they any number of things of why they act like that, there is the chance that they're wiry enough to jump on you and chew your face off. Like, it's once you've dealt with that, you're like, and that's, again, why I think it's effective. Like, you just have to experience that a couple times. You're like, wow, it's like just, come on, just get in the car, just do, fine. If they were reversed, like trying to get at you instead of away from you, it would be as dangerous as it is in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's really easy to justify all that. But if you think about it in the way that, we're talking about thinking about just people just jumping up and doing something, like if you take a step back and go, oh, yeah, my kid, it was a pain when, get dressed, or try to dress a child.
Yes. Like,
just get dressed. Now turn that around, and that's at you, all of that flailing and acting like spaz, towards you, and just like how like a greased pig, just why won't you do this one thing, Because while I don't have kids, I've had nieces, nephews, cousins had to take care of, and so I understand. And so when you see that and you think about turning that back on you and like trying to bite your face, it could probably happen. It's like a little chimpanzee, and they're pretty dangerous.
It'd be scary, yeah.
I mean, it is really scary, and it's one of those things where I think some of the best horror can be found in the scary. I mean, truly, and I think it's one of the things that Stephen King understands really well, and a lot of other people don't understand very well, which is that everyday goofy stuff can become scary when it bends really far from where you expected it to be. Which is why he has so much fun with things like plastic toy telephones and or little chattering wind-up teeth and things like that.
Well, because my sister had this doll that had this laugh, and I wanted to wonder if there was a demonic toy company a la Halloween that made this doll, because no one in their right mind would send a doll out with that laugh. Like, you got to understand, it's got to be mass-produced. But there's no way. And if that thing went off at night, I don't know why we didn't burn that doll. Like, we should have. That laugh was just not, like, if you saw it in a horror movie, you're like, oh, no one would ever make that. Mm-hmm. Like, that was done for the horror movie. But it felt like, in retrospect. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. In retrospect, like you're like, yeah, nobody should have made that thing. Like, who the heck released this? Good night. Like it was scary sounding and really disturbing. I don't know how she thought it was fine. Like no adult liked that doll. I will tell you that. Why my sister liked it, I have no idea. Why she wasn't deathly afraid of it. It should have had red eyes, but no adult who heard that wanted it around.
What was it that had? What was the thing? It was like an SNL or something where the baby Jesus doll cries with real cry.
That was SNL, and it was a baby Jesus that you could introduce to your home nativity set, and it had real crying.
Real crying, and it was
actually,
like, it was so creepy. It was
this horrible metallic noise that and it showed the actor, the husband and wife getting increasingly tired and zombie-like as the weeks, as Advent wore on. This terrible Jesus doll.
That sounds about right.
It was great. There is some inconsistency. I'm sure that there's in-universe explanations for this, but there's some inconsistency because there are people in this movie who get bit, and they become zombies right away. The girl seems to have been ill for many days.
Yeah.
And she takes forever.
Well, she didn't get it from being bit. She got it from the saliva of her dog. Because that was the thing. They said that it could be passed by saliva, but maybe saliva takes a lot longer to kind of get into the system.
I guess that's the idea. I guess that's what it is. The bite, since it goes straight into the bloodstream.
Yeah.
But what do I know? I'm not a doctor. I mean, I don't know if that makes any sense as an explanation or not. But yes, that's the way it works.
But I would say it was funny to me. I had such a hard time remembering the name of this movie. Every time we talk about it, I'd be like, what's the movie called again? Because it just didn't. And he was like, rec, like record, but of course Spanish. So in Spanish, the word is not record, it's grabar. And so rec to them it just means the button on the camera that makes it record, but it's not actually short for anything. And so when I was 16, I visited my uncle and my cousins and my aunt in Argentina, and they didn't speak any English, the little girls. And but they knew they had the machines like we have, everybody has like that. And so for them, it was you push row like to rewind, like on the remote. So it was just so funny to me that it was like it wasn't rewind, it wasn't like hit the rewind button. It was row. So I don't know. It just cracked me up when I saw that it was called rec because I'm like, these people don't know what that stands for, what that's for.
That's really funny. Yeah, I mean, actually, even in English, for years, even though I know darn well that it's fast forward, I often would go forward, or
Yeah.
Yes. No. So anyway, I know that this is going to be the end of our discussion of found footage, and I am not convinced enough that. Like, we could probably do 5 more found footage movies, but unlike, how a lot of times we'll say, boy, I bet we could discuss this film for another 4 hours. This is a case where I bet we could do 5 or 6 more but I don't think there would be much better than this film. I mean, I'm not saying that this movie
like I said, that Afflicted movie was good. Like, yeah. I still liked that, and it was a different take on kind of the whole thing. But I'm happy with it. Ending, the retrospective, ending here, and then kind of my interest in found footage. Again, if a good something comes out, it's stupid of me to just go, that's it. I know that you're telling me that's good, but I refuse to watch it because found footage, that's, it's what entertains you. Like if it's a good tale, then, watch it. But it takes somebody recommended one these days for me to. I'm not going to go out of my way to be like, oh man, another found footage. Let's just jump into that. That's
almost because they're just too easy to make. I think we've talked about that. How it's like trying to write a book. That it's almost too easy to make. It's a lot of effort, right? So you might not make a very good one. But if you can pull your craftsmanship together, you could spend a lot of time and you can make a whole feature-length film. But it'll be hard to crack into that extra level. But you know, I think that's more true with found footage than with traditional filmed, dramatic film. I don't know why, but it just seems to me that because it's easy to get started, that it's hard to tell what's going to be good versus what's not. But maybe I'm being a snob. I mean, it's entirely possible somebody write to me and go, "Listen, old man, that's not right. You know, this is where all the future stuff is going to be, and great art is going to follow." But I don't know. I'm not there yet. All right, let's get our final thoughts about Rec. And did I say it right, or is it Rec? Or
that's good.
or should it be Rec? So let's get our final thoughts about Rec, and then we will come around for endorsements. All right, Tony. Is there anything we missed? Anything that we need to point out, or otherwise just your final thoughts on Rec?
No, I think I was pleasantly surprised when I saw this movie the first time. Again, that was my foray into, well, have I seen too much of this? And then I really liked, and, Quarantine is okay. I don't know. That one's a weird one because it's actually close, if I remember correctly. I could be totally wrong now that it's been a while. But I was surprised at how close it hewed, if I remember correctly. But then something still wasn't quite there. I don't know, which can happen, Something about the magic changes sometimes when you remake a film.
Yes.
Maybe it didn't have the rawness. But
well, I mean, it's true. You could make this film a little slicker, but you might lose some of the believability that you're watching.
Yeah. So Quarantine isn't terrible, but Rec I would still recommend if you have a choice. Of course, since you can only get Rec and dub, maybe it's fine to watch Quarantine where at least the actors are using their own voices.
Yeah.
So maybe you're better off with that at this point if you can't find it in its original language. But I think it's pretty well crafted. Not sure that it needed sequels, but who am I to fault somebody for making money? We can go either way. Life is short, so I guess get what you can. It's what I've learned from the entertainment industry. Whether I, believe in their vision or not, everybody's. It's like, was it Udo Kier, where they ask him why did you do, what was it, Johnny Mnemonic or whatever? And he said, well, sometimes you do movies for a paycheck, sometimes you do them from art.
Yes.
And,
great.
As he got drunker and drunker, that was one of my best. That's one of my favorite Draft House experiences. Watching Udo Kier get really drunk and tell us about, sometimes you do movie for art, sometimes you do it for a paycheck. It's like, well, there you go. But I really, I think it's a good closer. And while there are other good ones, this is pretty decent. I think if you haven't seen it and you do like the genre, definitely see this over Paranormal Activity. I think it's a lot scarier and in a lot of ways more believable, even though we talked about Paranormal, being the couple that you just don't want to hang out with.
Yes.
The whole setup, I think, works for this pretty well.
Very good. Very good. Julia, final thoughts on Rec, and if you want, on the found footage genre, like whether this is a genre that you'll keep coming back to or not.
I really, like I said already, I thought this movie was scary. I thought it was felt very authentic. I enjoyed seeing, the Spanish folks and the. I thought it was weird that nobody ever went back to their own apartments. I didn't feel like anybody was keeping them from doing that. So I was like, why are you guys all hanging out together? I would think you would feel more safe in your own place, whatever. But it was interesting and really spooky. Found footage to me is pretty effective because I'm much more scared by things that could actually happen than I am by just really, and even though it's zombies and theoretically they can't actually happen, it still feels like it could because of how authentically it was portrayed. So to me, this is a genre that really does scare me in a good way, not in a God, those movies like what's the one that I walked out of? Is it that I was like, I'm not watching this one.
You're talking about the zombie. That was Return of the Living Dead.
Yeah, Return of the Living Dead. Stuff like that, where I'm just like, it's gross, it's annoying, it is scary, but not in a good way, and just disturbing. I don't want to watch this way. This is more like scary in a good way, where you're just kind of like, oh, that could happen, or if it happened, it would be like this, So I've enjoyed this little retrospective.
Very cool. So I think that the movies that we chose for this retrospective probably, I think, are good choices, especially because we got a really good argument out of Paranormal Activity. And I'm kind of one of those people where I generally don't even bother to watch a movie that I think is going to be truly boring. And maybe I'm going to miss out on something great. But in this case, good suggestion, Tony. I really loved the verisimilitude of it. I loved seeing Barcelona. I loved hearing people, going about their life. So there was a neat cultural aspect to it. It felt very special to watch a whole bunch of people going about their lives and speaking Spanish and being killed by zombies. So that was awesome. So that's our very mini found footage retrospective, because since we're all such traditionalists, I don't necessarily know how much more we would have been able to risk watching from week to week. Anyway, we're going to come back very soon with something else. We're going to stop in with something in memory of yet another cult favorite who died recently, and then we're going to have a longer one dedicated to Wes Craven. I'll just tell you that right now, that coming up very soon we have a Wes Craven retrospective, so that's going to be great. So let's get endorsements. Is there anything that you've been watching, listening to, checking out that you want to share with anybody? Tony, is there anything you've been up to?
Oh, I'm trying to think. I can't remember if I said it or not last week, but there's lots of awesome Shaw Brothers movies up on Netflix now, which I highly recommend. And I have most of them on DVD, but it's nice that at any given time I can put in Come Drink With Me, which is, I recommend, Executioners of Shaolin, which has some great training sequences and has where they got Pai Mei from the Pai Mei character in Kill Bill is pretty much the Pai Mei character from Shaolin Executioner, or Executioner of Shaolin, whichever way you want to put it, depending on which DVD you have or whatever.
Have you been watching the El Rey Network recently?
No, I don't have that on cable, which is unfortunate because there's tons of awesomeness on there.
Which network?
El Rey.
Oh, okay.
Rodriguez.
Yes,
they play.
El Rey plays basically a lot of Shaw Brothers all the time.
Well, I think the rumor is, or maybe it's not even a rumor, there's something that happened. It was very prohibitive to show Shaw Brothers stuff. And something happened recently that I've gotten rumblings from different people in the film community. So something happened. There's a huge flood. I watched 5 Shaolin Masters the other day. They did some really cool stuff in that, including a guy who has an axe that he can swing around on a rope. They still don't have some of the obscure stuff. Oh, they do have Kid with the Golden Arm, which is one of my all-time favorites. They don't have as crazy stuff like Battle Wizard, which they should. That would be awesome. Or House of Traps, or Flying Guillotine. But the original Shaw Brothers Flying Guillotine, anyway. Those are all really good. I'm hoping that it keeps trickling in like this. But yeah, having all of those, and they're sub as well. In fact, I don't think you can get them dubbed, which is, I kind of do miss. Sometimes you just want to play those old school dubs and hear people, say things like, "So, you think your kung fu is the best? Well, try this." You want to hear those actors doing that, even though they're not the the actors who originally portrayed them. So I guess the opposite of like our thing for Rec, right?
Yeah.
Like sometimes you grew up with those old school kung fu dubs, and sometimes you kind of just want to have that as a security blanket because it's awesome and that's how you grew up with. But all of these that I've seen so far have been subbed, which I still dig a lot. Like, I think it's awesome that we get that these days because that was never an option when we were growing up. So that's my recommendation is watch a ton of Shaw Brothers stuff that's on Netflix because it's great. Start with Kid with the Golden Arm because Five of the Deadly Venoms I don't think is up there. And then watch maybe Come Drink With Me and then just go crazy from there. There's lots of good stuff.
You know what that's like, Tony? You were just saying that you miss the old school, the bad dubs that we had in the 70s. And it's like, look, those are clearly imperfect presentations of the art, right? And yet a version of that movie, version of Kid with the Golden Arm with the bad dubbing becomes a work of art in itself. And you remember it that way. And it's not a perfect comparison, but it's just like how in America, the first album that Americans got of the Beatles was Meet the Beatles, okay? Meet the Beatles, though, actually was remixed from the way it had appeared in the UK. I mean, it wasn't called Meet the Beatles. It was called something else. And so the mixes that everybody got and played over and over again, If I Want to Hold Your Hand and whatever, were remixes, you know, and they didn't sound the way that George Martin wanted them to sound. And so there's a lot of purists out there who are like, oh, man, the Meet the Beatles remixes really suck. You know, people aren't appreciating, you know, and anybody. But people have all these fond memories because, I mean, it's the fucking Beatles, man. It's 1964 or whatever it was. And you know, we kind of imprint on the art that we react to. And it is a real thing. It's not like that's not the real one. That's why I'll always have a soft spot for Battle of the Planets, even though I know damn well that Battle of the Planets is not a good presentation of Gatchaman.
Yeah. Well, that one gets tougher as like as I watch Battle of the Planets. Like watching Seven Dark Seven as an adult is nails on a chalkboard style. It's not very funny. That's true. Just all of it, knowing that there's knowing that there's scenes that you should be watching that aren't in it because Seven Dark Seven is there is maddening as an adult. And I mean, I'm still watching a cartoon firmly aimed at, 10-year-olds or whatever.
Yes.
Well, whatever. Hey, don't judge me. But
I'm fascinated by. I definitely don't want to get deep into a Gatchaman discussion, but I'm totally fascinated by how much. Just the art of how much they had to screw with to make Battle.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, too, because, I mean, I was lucky enough to go to some screening where Quentin Tarantino was there and everybody was hanging out, and it was the Draft House, so you could kind of do that. It wasn't a big thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a big thing, but it wasn't a big thing, right? And, I asked him, I'm like, hey, all this stuff's coming out, all these Kung Fu movies, all these Shaw Brothers movies are coming out, and they're subtitled, like, what do you think about that? Like, in typical like kind of Tarantino.
I'm interested in what he thought.
No, he's like, it's. I'm probably doing it badly, but you get that manic. If you see him in any movie, he's that person regardless.
Yeah.
He's like, I keep hearing it, but I just want to hear those dubs because it's what I grew up with. He had the same exact idea.
Yes.
Like he's like, it's weird because you're listening to it and you should be happy that you have it. Like, I'm kind of paraphrasing, but basically he had the same Tarantino-esque vision of it was really cool that we can watch this, like, a nice print. Like, because they struck a really nice DVDs. And I'm hoping that they kind of I'll upgrade a bunch to Blu-ray as they come along. Like, I mean, there's been nice Blu-rays of at least Venom, Five Deadly Venoms, maybe Kid with the Golden Arm. If they do, I'll have to get that. But there's been a few that have trickled through, not the whole Shaw Brothers catalog. But hearing him, basically, like we were in total agreement. Like, man, it's cool to have this pristine copy of the thing that you love. But man, is it weird not hearing those dubs that you like.
Yeah, that's
and
why
that
I
was
think
kind of cool, like hearing him kind of like, because he loves the stuff. Like, he loves the stuff
Yeah.
he rips off, right? Like, regardless of what you think about him, like, there's a genuine love for all of that stuff. I personally like his films, but, you know, it's been cool not to like them lately or whatever. But
well, to hear somebody else validate this instinct that you have that, listen, my enjoyment of this is a performance in and of itself that is worth valuing. You know, I felt that way about, like, you know, any of those dubbed movies, when not just Chinese films, but you know, like, I don't know, Santo movies or
Giallo a lot of times too.
Yeah,
you know?
or Castle of Blood, you know, where they were always clearly dubbed. But to me, that just made it feel like they were taking place kind of in a magical other world, where everything was just slightly different, you know, from ours. And it didn't dawn on me that I was seeing a bastardized version. I kind of felt like I was seeing the real vision of another world that was very strange, you know, where it was black and white and people's voices didn't match up with what they were saying. You know, that was so there you go. But so anyway, we're way far afield. Julia, do you have anything to recommend?
Well, you know, I couldn't think of anything until you mentioned Quentin Tarantino, and I was like, oh yeah, we just watched that little movie, little picture called "She's Funny That Way," and it's a Peter Bogdanovich movie starring Owen Wilson, and Quentin Tarantino has a little cameo in it, which is what made me think of it. But it's a really fun, one of those fun little pictures. I always think about it when I say that. And it's you know, one of those movies that has all the plots and all the characters sort of intertwined with each other, and it's just kind of it's a comedy, a romantic comedy, but weird one. You know, like not a traditional style. And it's got Imogen Poots, I guess. Imogen, I don't know how you pronounce her name. Owen Wilson, Jennifer Aniston, Reese. What's his last name?
Ephons.
Yeah, Ephons. Yeah. And, yeah. So it's a neat movie. If you.
Yeah, it was by Peter Bogdanovich. Yeah, the Last Picture Show. It was really good. That was a good classic screwball comedy. Didn't get a major release because it turns out, even if you make a big screwball comedy, that's sort of the kind of thing that people like to watch on VOD. So now's a chance. I'm trying to think. Okay, actually, the biggest thing that popped up for the last week for me was Lisa and the Devil. I went back and watched this film by Mario Bava called Lisa and the Devil, and a companion picture that goes with it. And this is really interesting. All right, Lisa and the Devil gets made in 1973 with Telly Savalas, and it's about this woman who finds her way to a castle because the car, you know, she hitches a ride with this fighting rich couple and their hot chauffeur to this big castle where Telly Savalas is the major domo. And she can't seem to find a way to escape from the castle, and strange visions start to occur, and she starts to have flashbacks to somebody that looked just like her in the past and had relationships with all the people in the castle, apparently in the past. And it gets weirder and weirder. And it's a Mario Bava, you know, horror film, slasher film, giallo. And, you know, it ends up having a really cool ending that I won't give away. But it's, you know, maybe Mario Bava's best picture. I mean, it's really good. I mean, okay, I'm sure that's Black Sunday, but this is still quite good. Lisa and the Devil. But here's what's wild. Okay, so the movie comes out, doesn't do well in Italy because it's a little too arty even for Italy. And so when it comes to the United States, they decide, you know what's big over here? The Exorcist is big over here. So what they do is they make a movie that's basically 70% Lisa and the Devil, plus new footage that makes everything that happened to Lisa and the Devil into a flashback of a possessed woman. You know, the same actress from Lisa and the Devil. And they put a priest and an exorcism in it, and they call this new movie House of Exorcism. This new film, House of Exorcism, is terrible. It makes no sense at all. But it was really interesting to see this great Mario Bava picture that had been cut to ribbons and turned into a whole other movie for the American audience. So you could watch them side by side. Amazon Prime actually has them. You know, if you're the kind of person who's inclined to kill 3 whole hours watching 2 90-minute versions of the same story, that experience is available to you thanks to Prime. So.
Oh, and just I just did remember something else. I've been listening to music-wise. been Uncle Acid and the Deadbeats, which if any band, if somebody were to tell me this band sold their souls for the devil to be popular, not that they don't sound like they're good, but just their subject matter and how popular they got fairly quickly. And everything, like, if any one of those Jack Chick tracks were directed at somebody, I would be like, that would be the band I would be like, maybe, you know. But I really, like, they're really cool. It gives me, if I have to give the elevator pitch when I describe them, it sounds like an evil Beatles.
That's so funny. That sounds great.
And their new album, The Night Creeper, is out, and it's pretty cool. Oh, also a new Iron Maiden album is out, but which is 2 discs, which is awesome as well. But as far as horror goes, I think Uncle Acid and the Deadbeats fits really well with everything that we do. So I recommend The Night Creeper as well.
Outstanding. All right, and that is it from us this evening, but we will be back. I'm not sure if we're back next week or the week after next, but we'll be coming back with a brief stopover to honor one star who has recently passed, and then we'll be sticking around for a number of movies to honor Wes Craven. So join us on the Facebook page, leave comments, disagree with us, agree with us, whatever. We will totally engage with you. If you're listening on iTunes, we've gotten some new reviews recently. I'm so happy about that. The great thing about reviews, if you haven't left one, you totally should, because it helps people find the show. Thanks, everyone, and we will talk to you very, very soon. Thanks. Bye.
Buenas noches.
Good night.